Well, good morning, everybody. This is Josh here. It's 1/1/2014. 2014, 2 plus 0 plus 1 plus 4 is 7. It's a year of 7. And with the 1/1, it makes it a day of 9. Does that mean anything? Hell if I know. I just said it because. And this is what I wanted to try to convey on this New Year's Day to anybody who gives a damn. Is that we can overcome our obstacles. This year we can overcome the problems that we face personally. And if each one of us does this, then we have overcome our fears as a whole. And I truly believe that it's possible for an entire society to change their way of thinking, but I think it takes... Okay, well, let's take 9/11 for example. Look at how America came together after that event. It didn't last very long, but America came together. In that time, you could look to any other American and shake your head and say, yep, yep, and understand each other for a minute. Maybe a week. I think that the line that just popped into my head is from actually a song that I posted a while back. It's a song called Virus by Deltron 3030. And at the beginning, the first line is, crises precipitate change. Or it says something, something about in a world full of something people, global controls will have to be imposed. Crises precipitate change. And that's exactly the way I see the world. The crisis always precipitates the change, because until something big happens that we can get together with, it seems like we can never come together over anything. And I don't want to go so far as to bring the whole liberal conservative into this, because I don't do politics, but it's important. This is something that's been bothering me for a while, and before I came out here, I was just actually... The Family Guy was on, and I was just glancing at I just had it running in the background. And Stewie Griffin, he was going, Brian gave him a ride to his little girlfriend's house, and he's like telling Brian to leave, he's going to go hang out with his girlfriend. He's like, why don't you go sit in your car and listen to NPR and agree with yourself? And that little line right there it was perfect addition, because it really opened up this something that I wanted to convey in this video, which is that liberals often deserve to be called libtards. I always hated that word. People would call me a liberal. People would call me a libtard. Whatever. I'm not a liberal. I am not a liberal. I am not a conservative. I am not political in any way, but I do believe that humans are political creatures, and therefore I do have political views. I do believe that a society is better governed by a small group of trustworthy people. However, I do believe that those trustworthy people have to be educated in a system that values people over profit. In other words, anyone in politics today has grown up in an environment of cutthroat business and lies and deceit. And if that's the case, then the honest people are not going to want to join into politics. It's going to attract the type of people that it attracts. If people were forced to be reckoned for their decisions, if people were called out, if leaders were hanged when they wronged the people, if people were responsible and took accountability for the decisions that they made, then we could have a different society. But really, that's not going to happen overnight. We're not going to be able to change our leaders. We're not going to be able to oust our government or have a revolution where we start over. And there's a reason for that. We have a very complicated system, women, today. I mean, beyond anything that history we know of has produced. The system that we have in place, with controls and laws and regulations and whatnot, aren't just for whether you can ride your bike on the sidewalk anymore or which lane to drive your car in. Now these laws extend to nuclear reactors, high explosives, missiles, bombs. We have an arsenal in this world that could destroy us 1,000,000 times over. So, in order to change our government, we have to change our minds. We can't just say, well, we want you out. We want you, I always got really tired of hearing people say, oh, we want Obama impeached. And it was the same thing with Bush, because back then I was saying I wanted Bush impeached. But I realized how stupid it was after I really considered it. Why? Impeach someone for what? And to prove a point for what? So they can finally get out of office. It'll be easier on them. Then the vice president steps in and just pulls the same shit. This has been going on since politics. As soon as our country was founded, there were already people taking advantage. And it wasn't just slavery as of the blacks back then. It's been slavery of Americans since the beginning of the country. We will insult things like British Parliament. Whereas if you listen to a little bit of different a view on the subject, Parliament may actually be a better way, but we don't know for sure. It's working, but the thing is that in Parliament, people are to a degree responsible for what they do. Now, don't quote me on that. I'm just trying to get a point across that we don't understand how all these systems work. So what we do is we cast stones at other systems. Communism and socialism have been ridiculed from the beginning from the capitalist perspective in America. I always went along with that, just assuming that communism was what I was told it was. A bunch of people living under oppression with leaders and dictators who were taking too much. I came to find that that was indeed true. I was right. That's pretty much what communism has become, but it's not what it has to be. You see, many philosophers and anarchists throughout history have been opposed to it. Emma Goldman, I don't know if you've heard of her. She was a leading proponent of the anarchist movement. In her life, she was actually exiled from the United States. She was so hated by the U.S. And she went to live in Europe, and then I think she moved up to Toronto. She died in Toronto, Canada. And she actually had gone to a lecture for some people who had been arrested for being in an anarchist movement. And she didn't know anything about anarchism. And at the end of the lecture, the lady who had done the lecture walked up to Emma Goldman and said, hey, you seem like you're really moved by this. Did you know the people personally? She says, no, I have no idea who they were. I've never even heard of anarchism. I just felt related to those people, like I could sympathize. And the lady said, you're going to be a big part of this movement. Now, what I'm saying here is that the idea is that there are very intelligent people who understood that anarchism is not just chaos in the streets, but the view that our government has given us of anarchy means no rule. And the argument between anarchy and control government is the anarchist says that people left to their own devices will behave properly, and if not, will be put in their place by their own kind. Militias, whatnot. But if somebody takes control, as the NoFX line says, if somebody takes control, you'll be expected to beat them. Because it's an all-person control. But on the other hand, we have people saying, well, capitalism and democracy. Democracy is the way. Now, democracy would work if the people were honest in office. But they're not. They never have been. And I don't know of a single country or democracy where the people are given full access to the resources that they deserve. They may have more than another country, but they don't have full access. And I'll tell you something else. You know, the ones that think they are, like people who have told me, oh, Switzerland's such a great place, I love living in Sweden. It doesn't mean that your country's working perfectly. It just means that the people are better off. There's still people on the top making more. There's still conniving and lying and cheating and stealing. This is the way of the world. So the democracy says people by nature are crude and take and will harm others, so we need government to protect us. The anarchist approach says no. The only reason that we need government to protect us is because the government suppresses us. Therefore, people act out accordingly. And the only reason that people act bad is because of the form of government we have. You see the circle here. They say people are naturally bad, and anarchists say no, people are bad because of the form of government. The argument can never be reached, a conclusion, an agreement, because to have an agreement, you have to have proof. And with proof, you have to have empirical evidence, which is done through research. And there's too many people in a society to do research on a society. In other words, you can't take two countries of different types of leadership and compare them and expect to get direct results. There's too many different conflicts, like history, religion, environmental conditions. So this year, if I may get to my point, actually I better check to make sure that my camera still has some room, since I've been reduced to file sizes since I had copyright strikes. So, what I've got to say about this whole thing with government and different forms of leadership is that we can sit and argue about the details all day. We can sit and argue about who's doing what, which government's suppressing what, which secrets are being held. But after all the research I've done in my life, I haven't found any conclusive evidence that any of this can be brought out into the light for the majority, the masses, to see. People are way too programmed to see what's already happened. So in that sense, why don't we start reprogramming ourselves to see what's going on in the future? In other words, in another generation, we can raise a generation of aware, awake kids, people that can maybe harness this a little better than we have, in hopes that each generation will do a little better. And I hear a lot about indigo children and this and that, and how the kids who are born today have an extra strand of DNA, that kind of stuff. I'm not going to say it's all BS, because I can't prove that. But when I've looked to the evidence to show that it's true, all I find is that it's a bunch of BS. So, I'm not here to dispute the indigo children thing. That's not my point. I believe that kids born today do have more of a capacity, innate ability to learn. I don't know why, and I'm not going to try to explain it by saying that we have new activated DNA. I have absolutely no evidence for that. I've looked into it scientifically, and I'm open if anybody does have any information to prove that kids today really have more dormant DNA activated, if you would. But the reason I bring that in is because it's this hope that our kids can do better than we did. And I think they can, as long as they're not stuck in this paradigm of going between liberal and conservative. Yep, only got 1 minute left. Perfect. So yeah, this whole liberal conservative thing's got to go. We've got to stop calling each other, right-wingers and left-wingers. Like I've always liked to say, right, left wing, it's all the same bird. And we're all flying together. And I think that's all. I think that's all. This year we can drop the political bullshit and realize that none of us really know. And move forward with what we do know. Take control of our lives. Namaste.